The rifle was already in Elijah Thornton's hands when the barn door flew open. He hadn't held a child in 6 years, not since he buried his daughter Hope in the frozen ground. But when that little girl collapsed at his feet, blue-lipped and barely breathing, he dropped the gun and caught her before she hit the dirt. Behind her, 6 more children stumbled out of the shadows. The oldest boy grabbed Elijah's coat and choked out 3 words. He killed Papa. Subscribe to our channel and follow this story to the very end. Comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far our tale has traveled. The little girl hit the ground hard. Elijah dropped his rifle and lunged. His knees slammed into frozen dirt. He caught her head before it cracked against the barn floor, pulled her into his arms. Cold. She was so cold, lips blue, eyes rolled back, breathing shallow as a dying bird. Lily! A girl's scream cut through the dark. Lily, no! More children spilled from behind the feed bins. 2, 3, 4. Elijah lost count. Small bodies, thin faces, eyes wild with terror. A boy stepped in front of them. Tall, maybe 14. Fists up like he was ready to fight. Put her down. She's dying. Elijah stood the little one limp in his arms. You want to save her? Or you want to argue? The boy's jaw worked. His whole body shook cold fear both. How do I know you ain't gonna? You don't. Elijah was already moving toward the barn door. But she's got maybe 10 minutes before the cold takes her, so make up your mind. He didn't wait for an answer, just walked. Behind him, footsteps. Small ones, lots of them, good. The house was 20 yards through knee-deep snow. Elijah kicked the door open, carried the girl straight to the hearth. The fire had burned low. He laid her on the rug and grabbed kindling. You, he pointed at the tall boy. Wood box. Build this up. Fast. The boy hesitated. Now. Something in Elijah's voice moved him. He grabbed logs, started stacking. The other children filed in. Elijah counted as they passed. 6 more. 7 total, including the one on the floor. 3 boys, 4 girls, all of them skinny as fence posts. Close that door. Elijah was rubbing the little girl's hands, trying to force blood back into her fingers. And somebody tell me her name. Lily. A girl knelt beside him, 12 maybe, yellow hair, face pale as milk. She's 4. She stopped talking an hour ago. When she eat last? Silence. Elijah looked up. The yellow-haired girl wouldn't meet his eyes. When? 3 days. Her voice cracked. Maybe 4. Elijah's gut twisted. He'd seen starving cattle. He'd seen drought kill a whole herd in a single summer. But starving children was something else. Kitchen. He jerked his head at the tall boy. Bread in the tin. Milk in the cold box. Bring it. All of it. The boy. Sam Elijah heard one of the others whisper, moved fast. The rest of you. Elijah pointed at the rug near the fire. Sit. Don't talk. Just get warm. Nobody argued. Lily's eyes fluttered open around midnight. She looked up at Elijah, confused, scared. Then she saw Clara, the yellow-haired girl her sister Elijah had figured out, and reached for her. Clara! Her voice was barely a whisper. I'm hungry. Clara burst into tears. Elijah handed her a cup of warm milk. Small sips. Her stomach ain't ready for much. He stood and moved to the window. Outside, nothing but snow and darkness. The wind had died down some, but the cold was brutal. 25 below easy. Mister. He turned. The tall boy Sam stood behind him. His face was hard, but his eyes gave him away. Scared. Bone-deep scared. We ain't staying. Sam's voice was flat. Soon as Lily's better, we're gone. Where? Don't matter. Just away. Away from what? Sam's jaw tightened. He didn't answer. Boy. Elijah kept his voice low. I just pulled your sister off my barn floor half dead from cold and hunger. I fed you. I warmed you. Least you can do is tell me what you're running from." Sam stared at him for a long moment, then his shoulders dropped. "You know Cornelius Ashford." Elijah's blood went cold. Everyone in Wyoming Territory knew Cornelius Ashford. Richest man in 3 counties. Owned the bank in Silver Springs, half the mines in the hills, and rumor had it the judge and sheriff both. "I know him. He's our guardian." Sam spat the word like poison. "Legal and proper. Got papers signed by Judge Harmon himself. Guardian." Elijah looked at the children huddled by the fire, at the bruises on the dark-haired girl's arms, at the hollow cheeks and haunted eyes. "That what you call a man who starves children? He calls it discipline." Sam's voice cracked. "Says orphans need a firm hand. You ain't orphans. Your mama sold us." Sam's face went blank. $200. That's what we were worth." Elijah said nothing. There was nothing to say. She didn't want to. Clara's voice came from behind them. She was still holding Lily, stroking her hair. "Mama was desperate. Papa died in the mines and there was nothing left. Ashford said he'd give us a good home, said he'd send us to school, treat us like his own." "But he lied," Sam finished. "He always lies." The fire crackled. Wind moaned outside. "That ain't the worst of it." A new voice. Quiet. Flat. Elijah turned. A boy, maybe 10, red hair and freckles, was watching him from near the hearth. He hadn't spoken since they'd come inside. "Jake." Sam's voice was sharp. "Don't." "He needs to know." Jake stood up slowly, his hand pressed against his chest over something hidden under his thin coat. "If he's gonna help us, he needs to know why Ashford wants us gone." "Jake, Ashford killed my papa." Jake's eyes didn't waver. "Pushed him off a cliff and made it look like an accident. I saw it happen." The room went dead silent. Elijah felt the weight of those words settle on him like stones. "You saw it." "I was up on the ridge, playing." Jake's voice was steady, too steady for a 10-year-old. "Papa and Ashford were arguing at the cliff edge, about money, about the mine. Papa said he was going to change the partnership papers. Said Ashford wasn't getting another cent." "What happened then?" "Ashford pushed him." Jake's hand pressed harder against his chest. "One shove. That's all it took. Papa went over the edge and I heard him scream all the way down." Clara was crying silently. Sam had gone pale. "Ashford climbed down after," Jake continued. "Took something from Papa's coat. Papers. Then he rode back to town and told everyone it was an accident. Said Papa slipped on loose rock. And nobody questioned it. Ashford owns the sheriff, owns the judge, owns half the town." Jake's eyes were hard. Who was going to question him? Elijah looked at the boy, at the hand pressed to his chest, at the shape hidden beneath his coat. "What did you see, Jake?" "Exactly." Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a small leather book. Worn cover, dog-eared pages. "I remember everything." He held the book tight. "And I never forget." Before Elijah could respond, a girl's voice cut through the silence. "Someone's coming." The dark-haired girl, Grace Sam's other sister, was at the window. Her face was white. "Riders, 3 of them, coming up the road." Elijah moved fast. He grabbed his rifle from where he'd dropped it, checked the chamber. "All of you, back room, now." "But," Clara started. "Now." Sam grabbed Lily from Clara's arms. "You heard him. Move." The children scrambled. Elijah waited until he heard the back room door close, then crossed to the window. 3 riders, just like Grace said, moving slow through the snow, lanterns swinging. Elijah's finger found the trigger. The lead rider pulled up at the edge of the yard, called out, "Thornton Elijah Thornton." Not Ashford. Elijah recognized the voice. Wade Garrett, County Sheriff. Bought and paid for maybe, but not a killer. Not yet. What do you want, Wade? Need to talk. Official business. It's past midnight. I know what time it is. Garrett's voice was tired. Open the door, Elijah. It's cold as hell out here. Elijah weighed his options. Running would only make things worse. And Garrett wasn't a bad man, just a weak one. He opened the door. Garrett stepped inside, stamping snow from his boots. Behind him, 2 deputies waited in the yard hands near their guns. Heard you had visitors tonight? Garrett's eyes swept the room. 7 children, give or take. Property of Cornelius Ashford. Property. Elijah didn't lower the rifle. That what we're calling children now. Legal wards, same thing. Garrett held up a folded paper. Ashford filed a complaint. Says you're harboring runaways. Wants them back. And if I say no, then I arrest you for kidnapping and take them anyway. Garrett's jaw tightened. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Elijah. Just give me the kids and nobody gets hurt. Nobody except them. Elijah met his eyes. You seen the bruises on those children, Wade? Seen how thin they are? Ashford's been starving them, beating them. And you want to hand them back. Something flickered across Garrett's face. Doubt. Shame. I got orders, Elijah. Orders from who? Ashford Judge Harmon. Elijah stepped closer. You remember what happened to James Brennan, Wade? Fell off a cliff 2 years back. Convenient timing, wasn't it? Right after he tried to change the partnership papers on that silver mine. Garrett's face went pale. That boy in my back room saw it happen. Elijah's voice was low-hard. Saw Ashford push his daddy off that cliff. Saw him take papers from the body. You want to give a murderer's witness back to the murderer? Silence. Just the wind and the fire. I can't. Garrett shook his head. I can't just ignore a legal order, Elijah. Ashford's got papers, signed by the judge. Then give me time. 3 days. Let me find proof. Proof of what? That Ashford murdered James Brennan, that those guardianship papers are a lie. Elijah set the rifle against the wall. 3 days, Wade. That's all I'm asking. Garrett stared at him for a long moment. 2 days. His voice was barely a whisper. Ashford's coming for them on New Year's morning. I can't stop him without a damn good reason. Then I'll give you one. Garrett turned and walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the frame. Elijah, you know what you're risking, everything. Your land, your freedom, maybe your life. I know. Why? You don't even know these kids. Elijah thought about Margaret, about Hope, about the 2 graves behind the house covered in snow. Maybe that's why. Garrett shook his head slowly. Then he walked out into the cold. The children were huddled together in the back room when Elijah opened the door. Lily was asleep in Clara's arms. Tommy, the 6-year-old, with the stuffed bear, had his face pressed against Sam's shoulder. The others were wide-awake eyes fixed on Elijah. They gone? Sam asked. For now. We got 2 days. 2 days until what? Until I find a way to stop Ashford for good. Jake stepped forward. His hand was still pressed against his chest over the leather book. I can help. His voice was quiet, but steady. I remember everything. Every word Ashford said, every move he made. I can tell a judge. No. Elijah cut him off. You keep that to yourself for now. Don't mention it. Don't show it. Don't even think about it where someone might see. But Ashford's got the judge in his pocket. You walk into that courtroom waving evidence around, it disappears. You disappear. Elijah knelt so he was eye level with the boy. You understand what I'm saying? Jake's face went pale. He understood. When the time comes, you'll get your chance. But not yet. Not until we got people who'll listen. What people? Grace's voice was bitter. Everyone in this territory answers to Ashford. Not everyone. Elijah stood. There's a preacher named Stone. Rides circuit through the county. If your folks registered any papers with the church will's birth records, anything he'd know. Mama talked to a preacher, Clara said slowly. Right before she gave us to Ashford. Said she wanted to make sure we'd be taken care of. That's something. Elijah moved to the window, looked out at the dark. First light I ride for town. Find Stone. Find proof. You stay here. Keep the doors locked. Keep the curtains closed. And if Ashford comes before you get back? Sam's voice was tight. Elijah crossed to the corner and picked up his rifle, held it out. Then you do what needs doing. Sam stared at the gun like it might bite him. I ain't never shot nobody. Let's hope you don't have to. Elijah pressed the rifle into his hands. But if it comes down to them or you protect your family. That's what family does. Sam's hands were shaking, but he took the gun. The night stretched on. Elijah sent the children to bed, his bed all 7 of them piled together for warmth, and sat in his chair by the fire. He couldn't sleep, didn't try. 2 days. 48 hours to find proof that one of the richest men in Wyoming Territory was a murderer. To convince a bought judge to side with a broke rancher and 7 starving kids. Impossible odds. But he'd faced impossible before. Faced it when the diphtheria came through and took hope in 3 days. Faced it when Margaret stopped eating, stopped talking, stopped breathing. He'd failed then. Failed them both. Maybe this was his chance to do better. Around 3 in the morning, soft footsteps padded across the floor. Clara appeared in the firelight, Lily awake in her arms. She wants water. Elijah got up, filled a cup from the pitcher, handed it to Clara, who held it to Lily's lips. Mr. Thornton. Yeah. Why are you doing this? Clara's eyes were wet. You don't know us. You got no reason to risk everything for strangers. Elijah was quiet for a long moment. 6 years ago. His voice was rough. I had a wife, a daughter, Margaret and Hope. Clara waited. They're buried out back, under the oak tree. He stared at the fire. After they died, I stopped caring about much of anything. Figured if I didn't love nothing, I couldn't lose nothing. Lily had fallen asleep again. Clara held her close. Then you 7 came stumbling into my barn. Elijah looked at Clara, at the sleeping child in her arms. And I thought about Hope, about how she was the same age as Lily when she got sick, about how I would have done anything to save her. But you couldn't. No. His throat tightened. I couldn't. But maybe... He stopped. Started again. Maybe I can save you. Clara was crying now, silent tears running down her face. That don't make sense, she whispered. We ain't your family. Not yet. Elijah stood slowly. But family ain't about blood. Family's about who you're willing to fight for. He took Lily from Clara's arms, carried her back toward the bedroom. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Dawn broke gray and cold. Elijah saddled his horse before First Light checked his rifle, loaded his pockets with extra ammunition. Not because he expected to shoot anyone, because Ashford's men might expect to shoot him. Sam was waiting in the doorway when he led the horse out. You're really going? Said I would. What if you don't come back? Elijah stopped. Looked at the boy, this 14-year-old who'd been carrying his family on his shoulders for months. There's a trapper's cabin 5 miles north up the creek. If I ain't back by sundown, you take the kids and head there. Stay hidden. Wait for me. How long? Long as it takes. Elijah swung up into the saddle. You're in charge, Sam. Don't let me down. Sam's jaw tightened. I won't. Elijah kicked the horse into motion. Didn't look back. The ride to Silver Springs took 2 hours. Snow had drifted deep on the roads, and the horse had to fight for every step. But Elijah pushed on the cold, biting through his coat, his mind racing ahead. He needed to find Stone, needed to find proof, needed to build a case strong enough to stand against Ashford's money and power. 2 days. That's all he had. Silver Springs was quiet when he rode in. New Year's morning. Most folks were sleeping off last night's whiskey. The streets were empty, the buildings shuttered. Elijah tied his horse outside Martha Chen's general store and pushed through the door. Martha looked up from her ledger. 55 years old, gray in her hair, ink stains on her fingers. She'd run this store alone since her husband died. Knew everything about everyone in 3 counties. Elijah Thornton. Her eyebrows went up. You look like hell. Feel like it too. He closed the door behind him. Need your help, Martha. What kind of help? The kind that might get us both killed. Martha set down her pen. Well, that's not something you hear every day. Sit down. Talk. He told her everything, the children, the beatings, the starvation, Jake's accusation. When he finished, Martha's face was stone. I always knew Ashford was a snake. She stood, moved to a cabinet in the corner. But murder, that's a different kind of evil. You believe it? I believe those children believe it, and I believe James Brennan didn't just fall off a cliff. She pulled out a yellowed piece of paper, handed it to him. Found this last week, going through old records. Elijah looked at it. An invoice from 1885, mining equipment purchased by James Brennan and Cornelius Ashford Partners. See the note at the bottom. Martha pointed. 3 weeks after this purchase, Brennan amended the partnership, made sure his share would go to his children if he died. And 2 weeks after that, he fell off a cliff. Martha's voice was flat. Convenient, ain't it? Elijah stared at the invoice. His hands shook. This is something, Martha, but it ain't enough. No, it ain't. She crossed her arms. But I know someone who might have more. Reverend Stone's in town, staying at the boarding house. I know. I was heading there next. Go, fast. Martha glanced toward the window. And Elijah, watch your back. Ashford's got eyes everywhere. The boarding house was 3 blocks down. Elijah moved quick, keeping to the shadows, hand near his gun. He found Stone in the common room eating breakfast by the fire. 62 years old, silver-haired, weathered face. The kind of preacher who'd seen everything and judged no one. Reverend. Stone looked up. His eyes narrowed. Elijah Thornton. Haven't seen you in church since... I ain't here for church. Elijah sat across from him, leaned close. I'm here about Cornelius Ashford and 7 children he's trying to destroy. Stone set down his fork. I'm listening. 20 minutes later, Stone's face was grave. I knew Sarah Whitmore, he said slowly. Talked to her before she signed those guardianship papers. She was desperate, Elijah, drowning in debt. I told her to wait, to find another way. But she was too scared. Did she register anything with the church? A will? Something that might give us a claim to those kids? Stone was quiet for a long moment. Not Sarah. He rubbed his forehead. But Emily Brennan James's wife, she registered her will with me 3 years ago, before she died of fever. What did it say? Named a guardian for Jake and Abby in case James couldn't care for them, her sister, Helen Crawley, up in Montana Territory. Elijah's heart kicked. If that will still exists. It supersedes any guardianship papers Ashford filed. Stone nodded. Helen Crawley would have legal claim to those children. Where's the will now? County seat, St. Catherine's Parish. Stone's jaw tightened. I can ride there today. But Elijah, it's 40 miles. In this weather, it'll take me 2 days minimum. I ain't got 2 days. Then you'll have to find another way to stall. Stone grabbed his coat. I'll leave within the hour. If the will exists, I'll find it. Thank you, Reverend. Stone paused at the door. Those children, they're safe. For now. Keep them that way. His eyes were hard. Whatever it takes. Elijah was halfway back to his horse when he saw them. 2 men, standing outside Martha's store. Hard faces, guns on their hips, and between them, stepping out of a fancy carriage, was Cornelius Ashford himself. Elijah ducked into an alley, pressed himself against the wall. Through the gap between buildings he could hear voices. Asking about some children, Mrs. Chen, 7 of them, runaways from my care. Don't know nothing about no runaways. Martha's voice was ice. That's strange, because someone saw Elijah Thornton's horse tied outside your store not an hour ago. Ashford's voice was smooth, pleasant. The voice of a man who'd never had to fight for anything in his life. And Thornton's ranch is exactly where I'd expect desperate children to hide. Silence. You wouldn't be lying to me, would you, Mrs. Chen, because that would be unfortunate. I told you. I don't know nothing. A long pause. Then Ashford's voice lower now. Watch the store. If Thornton comes back, follow him. What about the rancher? Leave him to me. Footsteps crunched on snow. I'll be paying Mr. Thornton a visit this afternoon, and I'm bringing friends. Elijah didn't wait. He circled around through back alleys, found his horse, and rode hard for the hills. Not the main road. Too exposed. He took the back trails, the ones that wound through creek beds and pine forests. Trails that weren't on any map. His mind raced as he rode. Ashford knew. Knew the children were at his ranch. Knew Elijah was helping them. He had hours, maybe less, before Ashford showed up with his hired guns. The children needed to move. Now. He crested the ridge above his property just past noon. Looked down at the house. No smoke from the chimney. His blood turned to ice. He kicked the horse into a gallop, flew down the slope, hit the yard at a run, burst through the front door. Empty. Fire dead. Blankets scattered. And on the floor near the kitchen, blood. Not much. A smear. A few drops. But enough. Sam! His voice echoed through the empty house. Clara, Jake. Nothing. He ran to the back room. Empty. Checked the barn. Empty. The root cellar. Empty. They were gone. The trapper's cabin. Sam remembered. Elijah mounted up and rode north following the creek. His eyes scanned the snow for tracks. There. Small footprints. A lot of them. Moving fast. He followed. The trail wound through trees up the slope deeper into the mountains. An hour passed. 2. Then he heard voices. Sam, I can't carry her anymore. He rounded a bend and saw them. Clara struggling through waist-deep snow, Lily limp in her arms. Sam pulling Tommy by the hand. Jake and Abby huddled together. Grace bringing up the rear blood on her face. Clara! She spun. Nearly dropped Lily. Mr. Thornton. Relief flooded her face. They came. 2 men. They had guns and... I know. Elijah dismounted, took Lily from her arms. I know. You did good. You got out. Sam shot at them. Grace's voice was shaking. Scared them off, but one of them grabbed me and... Elijah saw the split lip, the bruise blooming on her cheek. Did you bite him? Grace's chin came up. Drew blood. Good girl. He swung back onto the horse, settled Lily in front of him. Cabin's another mile. Stay close. Stay quiet. We're almost there. The trapper's cabin was small, half buried in snow, but it was shelter. Elijah kicked the door open, carried Lily inside. Got a fire started with the last of his matches. The children huddled around the flames, shivering exhausted. Safe. For now. But Ashford was still out there, and tomorrow he'd be coming with the sheriff and a court order. Elijah sat by the door, rifle across his knees, watching the dark. "Mr. Thornton." He turned. Tommy, the 6-year-old, was watching him, clutching his ratty stuffed bear. "Yeah. Are you going to send us back to Uncle Neil?" "No." "Promise." Elijah looked at the small face, at the fear in those eyes, at all 7 children watching him, waiting for an answer. He thought about Hope, about the promise he'd made to keep her safe, about how he'd failed. "I promise," he said. "I ain't letting nobody take you, not while I'm breathing." Tommy nodded slowly. Then he crawled over and leaned against Elijah's side. "I believe you," Tommy whispered. "You're like the man in Clara's stories, the one who saves everyone." Elijah's throat tightened. He put his arm around the boy. "I ain't a hero, son." "That's okay." Tommy's eyes were closing. "Heroes are just people who don't give up." The fire crackled. Wind moaned against the walls. And somewhere in the dark, Elijah Thornton made a choice. Tomorrow, Ashford would come with his money and his lawyers and his bought sheriff. Tomorrow, the law would be against them. But tonight, 7 children were warm and fed and safe. And that was worth fighting for. That was worth everything. Dawn came slow and gray through the cabin's single window. Elijah hadn't slept. Couldn't. Every snap of a branch, every gust of wind against the walls had him reaching for his rifle. The children slept in a pile near the fire, tangled together like puppies seeking warmth. Tommy had stayed pressed against Elijah's side all night, the stuffed bear clutched to his chest even in sleep. Elijah looked down at the boy's face. Peaceful now. No fear, no hunger. Just a child dreaming whatever dreams children dream. He thought about Hope, about how she used to crawl into his lap on cold mornings, press her face against his chest, and say, "You're warm, Daddy, warm like sunshine." 6 years. 6 years since he'd heard that voice. But now there were other voices, other children, and they needed him awake. Sam stirred first. The boy sat up, rubbed his eyes, and found Elijah watching him. "You didn't sleep." "Somebody had to keep watch." Sam stood slowly, careful not to wake the others. He crossed to the window and looked out at the snow-covered mountains. "They'll come today." "Probably." "What do we do?" Elijah set the rifle against the wall and stood. His bones ached from sitting all night on the cold floor. "We can't stay here. Ashford knows my land. He'll figure out where I'd send you." He moved to the fire, added the last piece of wood. "There's a woman in town, Martha Chen. She's got a root cellar under her store. Big enough for all of you." "You want us to hide in a cellar?" "I want you to stay alive." Elijah turned to face him. "Stone's riding for the county seat, looking for a will that might give us legal claim to Jake and Abby. If he finds it, everything changes. And if he doesn't..." Elijah didn't answer. He didn't have to. Clara woke next, then Grace, then the others one by one. Lily was the last, blinking up at Clara with confused eyes. "Where are we?" "Somewhere safe, honey." Clara smoothed Lily's hair. "Mr. Thornton's taking care of us." Lily looked at Elijah, studied him with that strange intensity only small children have. "Are you our new daddy?" The question hit Elijah like a fist to the chest. He saw Clara flinch, saw Sam's jaw tighten. He stopped, started again. "I'm a friend. That's all you need to know for now." Lily considered this. Then she nodded, apparently satisfied, and reached for Clara's hand. They ate what little food Elijah had brought: dried beef, a few biscuits, water from the melted snow. Not much, but enough to put color back in their cheeks. Jake sat apart from the others, hunched over his leather book. His pencil moved across the page in quick, sure strokes. Elijah crossed to him. "What are you drawing?" Jake didn't look up. "Last night. The cabin. All of us together." Why? Because I might forget. And I don't want to forget this. Elijah looked at the page. Simple lines but clear. 7 children around a fire. A man with a rifle by the door. And above them, through the cabin's window, stars. You've got talent, boy. Mama said that too. Jake's pencil stopped. Before she died. How'd she pass? Fever, 2 years before Papa. Jake's voice was flat, empty. I drew her too, while she was sick, so I'd remember her face. Elijah's throat tightened. Can I see? Jake hesitated. Then he flipped back through the pages. Stopped at a drawing of a woman lying in bed, eyes closed, face peaceful. Beautiful, even in illness. She looks kind. She was. Jake closed the book. Papa said she was the kindest person he ever knew. Said that's why God took her early. Heaven needed her more than we did. You believe that? Jake looked up. His eyes were old, too old for 10. I believe God takes people. I don't believe he needs them. Before Elijah could respond, Grace's voice cut through the cabin. Someone's coming. Elijah grabbed his rifle and moved to the window. In the distance, a single rider was making his way up the creek bed, moving slow, careful. Everyone get back, behind the woodpile, now. The children scrambled. Sam grabbed Lily, Clara grabbed Tommy. Jake shoved his book inside his coat and pressed himself against the wall. Elijah cocked the rifle and waited. The rider came closer, close enough to make out details. A black coat, silver hair, a wooden cross hanging from the saddle horn. Stone. Elijah let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. He opened the cabin door and stepped outside. Reverend, you're supposed to be heading for the county seat. Stone dismounted, his face grim. I was. Got 3 miles out and ran into trouble. What kind of trouble? Ashford's men, 2 of them, watching the north road. Stone tied his horse to a tree branch. Turned back before they saw me. But Elijah, they're blocking all the main routes out of the territory. He knows we're looking for proof. He knows something. That's enough. Stone stamped snow from his boots and moved toward the cabin door. Where are the children? Inside. Safe. Stone nodded. Then he stopped his hand on the doorframe. There's more. I heard talk in town before I left. Ashford's called a meeting for this afternoon. Town hall. He's presenting his case to the community. Wants to turn everyone against you before the sheriff even gets involved. Let him talk. Words don't change what he did. Words change everything out here. Stone's eyes were hard. You know how these towns work, Elijah. People believe what the powerful man tells them, and Ashford's the most powerful man in 3 counties. Then we tell them different. With what rumors? The word of a 10-year-old boy. Stone shook his head. We need that will. We need legal proof that Ashford's guardianship is a lie. And how do we get it if your roads are blocked? Stone was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at Elijah with something like hope in his eyes. There's another way. Longer. Harder. Through the mountains instead of around them. Indian trails. Trapper routes. I used them 30 years ago when I first came to this territory. Stone rubbed his jaw. It'll take 3 days instead of 2. Maybe 4 if the weather turns. But Ashford's men won't know to watch those paths. 3 days. Elijah's mind raced. The sheriff's coming tomorrow. Ashford will have a court order by sundown. Then you'll have to stall them. How? Stone reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. I wrote a letter to Judge Harmon before I left town. Told him I'm contesting the guardianship on grounds of fraud and child endangerment. It's not much, but it should buy you a day, maybe 2. Elijah took the paper. The ink was still fresh, the signature bold. You could lose everything for this, Reverend. Your position, your reputation. I lost more than that the day I let Sarah Whitmore sign those papers. Stone's voice was heavy. Those children have been suffering for 2 months because I didn't have the courage to stop it. Well, I've got courage now. He turned and walked back to his horse. 3 days, Elijah. Keep them safe for 3 days. I'll be back with proof, or I won't be back at all." He mounted up, kicked his horse into motion, and disappeared into the trees. Elijah watched him go. Then he looked down at the letter in his hands. 3 days. 72 hours. It might as well have been a lifetime. Inside the cabin, 7 faces watched him as he came through the door. "Was that the preacher?" Sam asked. "Yeah." "Is he gonna help us?" "He's trying." Elijah folded the letter and tucked it into his coat. "But we can't stay here. We need to get back to town." "Town?" Grace's voice was sharp. "That's where Ashford is. That's where the sheriff is. You want to walk us right into their hands. I want to hide you somewhere they won't look." Elijah picked up his rifle. "Martha Chen's got a cellar under her store. Ashford's already searched it once. He won't search it again." "How do you know?" "Because men like Ashford don't think small. They look for grand gestures, big moves. They don't look in root cellars." He moved toward the door. "Besides, Martha's one of the few people in this town who ain't scared of him. She'll keep you safe." Clara stood Lily in her arms. "What about you?" "I'm going to that meeting." "The one Ashford called?" Sam's voice cracked. "That's suicide." "Maybe." Elijah met his eyes. "But if I don't show up, people will think I got something to hide. They'll believe whatever Ashford tells them." He shouldered his rifle. "I need to look them in the face. Remind them who I am, what I've lost, and ask them if they really believe a man like me would risk everything for a lie." The children were quiet. "You're brave," Abby said softly. She was holding Jake's hand, her red hair tangled from sleep. "Like a knight in a story." "Ain't nothing brave about it." Elijah opened the door. "Just stubborn." The ride back to Silver Springs took 3 hours. Elijah kept to the back trails, the children walking behind his horse in a ragged line. Sam led the way, breaking trail through the snow. Clara brought up the rear, Lily on her hip, Tommy holding her free hand. They reached the edge of town just past noon. The streets were busier now, New Year's Day in full swing, people moving between houses exchanging greetings, pretending the world was good. Elijah tied his horse behind Martha's store and led the children through the back door. Martha was waiting. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady. "Ashford's men came by an hour ago. Asked if I'd seen you." "What did you tell them?" "Same thing I told them yesterday." "Nothing." She looked at the children, at their thin faces and frightened eyes. "Lord have mercy, they look half dead." They almost were. Elijah guided them toward the back of the store. "I need to hide them. Somewhere Ashford won't look." The cellar. Martha was already moving, pulling up a hidden trapdoor behind a stack of flour sacks. "It's cold down there, but dry. I'll bring blankets. Food." "Thank you, Martha." "Don't thank me yet." She helped Clara down the ladder, then reached for Lily. "Ashford's meeting starts in an hour. Half the town's going, and from what I hear, he's got quite a speech planned." "I know. I'm going." Martha stopped, stared at him. "You're what?" "Going to the meeting." Elijah handed Tommy down to Sam, who'd already reached the bottom. "If I hide, they'll think I'm guilty. I need to face them." "Elijah Thornton, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard." Martha's voice was sharp. "Ashford will have you arrested on the spot. You'll be in a cell before sundown." "Maybe, but at least they'll hear my side first." "Your side?" Martha grabbed his arm. "You've got no proof, no witnesses, nothing but the word of 7 children against the richest man in the territory. What exactly do you think you're going to say?" Elijah looked down at the trapdoor, at the faces looking up at him from the darkness below. "The truth," he said quietly. "Sometimes that's all you've got." He squeezed Martha's hand, then climbed down the ladder. The cellar was small, low-ceilinged, smelling of earth and root vegetables. The children huddled together in the dim light, watching him. "I'll be back," Elijah said. "A few hours, maybe less. What if you don't come back? Clara's voice shook. Then you stay here. Stay hidden. Martha will take care of you until Reverend Stone returns. And if the Reverend doesn't come back either. Elijah was quiet for a moment. Then he knelt in front of her eye level with the children. Listen to me, all of you. His voice was low, steady. I've spent 6 years giving up, letting the world beat me down, waiting to die because I didn't have nothing worth living for. He looked at each of them in turn. Sam trying so hard to be strong. Clara holding her family together with sheer will. Jake with his book full of memories. Grace angry and scared and fierce. Abby still believing in fairy tales. Tommy clutching his bear. Lily too young to understand any of it. But I've got something now. I've got you. His voice cracked. And I ain't giving up again. Not ever. You understand? Nobody spoke. But Tommy reached out and touched Elijah's face. Don't be scared. Tommy whispered. Heroes always come back. Elijah closed his eyes, felt the small hand against his cheek. I'll do my best, son. He climbed back up the ladder and closed the trapdoor behind him. The town hall was packed when Elijah arrived. Every seat taken, people standing along the walls, spilling out the door into the cold. He pushed through the crowd, ignoring the stares, the whispers that followed him like a wake. Ashford stood at the front of the room, flanked by his lawyers. He was dressed in his finest coat, gold watch chain, gleaming, that blood-red ring on his finger catching the light. Sheriff Garrett stood off to the side, arms crossed, face unreadable. Judge Harmon sat behind a table, papers spread before him. Old gray-haired, with the watery eyes of a man who'd made too many compromises. The room went quiet as Elijah walked down the center aisle. Mr. Thornton? Ashford's voice was smooth, pleasant. So glad you could join us. I was just telling these good people about the 7 children you've been harboring. Children who belong in my care. They don't belong to you. Elijah's voice carried through the room. They're not property. They're my legal wards. I have the paperwork to prove it. Ashford held up a document, that familiar red wax seal at the bottom. Signed by Judge Harmon himself. Papers don't make a man fit to raise children. Elijah turned to face the crowd. You all know me. Most of you knew my wife, my daughter. You know what I lost. Silence. A few nods, a few averted eyes. I found those children in my barn 3 nights ago. Starving, freezing. The little one, 4 years old, was so cold she couldn't even cry anymore. His voice hardened. That's what Cornelius Ashford's care looks like. Starvation, beatings, terror. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lies. Ashford's smile never wavered. The desperation of a lonely man trying to hold on to something that doesn't belong to him. Then explain the bruises on Grace Whitmore's arms. Explain why Tommy Caldwell flinches every time a man raises his voice. Explain why those children would rather freeze to death in a barn than go back to your house. Children have active imaginations. They exaggerate. They lie. Ashford spread his hands. Ask any parent. I'm asking you. Elijah stepped closer. Look me in the eye and tell me you never raised a hand to those children. For just a second, something flickered across Ashford's face. A crack in the mask. Then it was gone. I've disciplined them when necessary, as any guardian would. Discipline. Elijah's voice was ice. Is that what you call beating a 9-year-old girl until she can't walk? The room erupted. Voices overlapping, people standing, someone shouting for order. Judge Harmon banged his gavel. Quiet! Everyone, quiet! The noise died slowly. Harmon looked at Elijah, his expression sour. Mr. Thornton, these are serious accusations. Do you have proof? I have witnesses, 7 of them. Children. Ashford's voice was dismissive. Confused, traumatized children who've been manipulated by a grieving man desperate for a family. Then bring them here. A new voice. Sarah Chen stepped forward from the crowd, arms crossed. Let them speak for themselves. Let us hear their side. More murmurs. A few people nodded. Ashford's jaw tightened. That would be inappropriate. Those children are my wards. They're upset, confused. Putting them on display would only traumatize them further. More traumatized than being beaten and starved. Sarah's voice was sharp. Seems to me you don't want them to talk because you're scared of what they'll say. I'm not scared of anything. But Ashford's smile had slipped. Elijah saw his opening. There's something else. He reached into his coat and pulled out Stone's letter. This was written by Reverend Ezekiel Stone, circuit preacher for this territory for 15 years. He's contesting the guardianship on grounds of fraud and child endangerment. He handed the letter to Judge Harmon. The judge read it slowly, his face going paler with each line. Where's Stone now? Riding for the county seat, looking for documents that prove Ashford's guardianship papers are illegal. What documents? Ashford's voice had lost its smoothness. Emily Brennan's will, the one that names her sister as guardian for Jake and Abby. Elijah watched Ashford's face. You remember Emily, don't you? James Brennan's wife? The woman who registered her will with the church because she didn't trust the local judge. The room went dead silent. Ashford's mask cracked wider. Just for a second. Just long enough for Elijah to see the fear underneath. This is ridiculous. Ashford turned to Harmon. Your Honor, this man is clearly delusional. He has no proof, no evidence, nothing but the ramblings of a grief-stricken mind. I demand you issue the order to return my wards immediately. Harmon hesitated. His eyes moved from Ashford to Elijah to the crowd watching in tense silence. The letter from Reverend Stone does raise questions, he said slowly. Questions that should be answered before any decision is made. Questions. Ashford's voice rose. What questions? I have legal documents, signed and witnessed. And Stone claims those documents are fraudulent. Harmon set the letter down. I'm postponing my ruling until Stone returns with the evidence he claims to have. 3 days. 3 days. Ashford stepped forward. Your Honor, this is my courtroom, Mr. Ashford. Harmon's voice was sharp. And I'll run it as I see fit. He banged his gavel. This meeting is adjourned. The crowd began to disperse, voices rising in 100 conversations. Elijah felt a hand on his shoulder. Martha Chen. That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen, she said quietly, or the stupidest. Probably both. Elijah watched Ashford conferring with his lawyers, their faces tight with anger. But we bought time. That's what matters. 3 days. Martha's eyes were worried. A lot can happen in 3 days. I know. Elijah turned toward the door. That's what scares me. Outside, the afternoon sun was already fading. Long shadows stretched across the snow. Elijah was halfway to his horse when a voice stopped him. Thornton. He turned. Sheriff Garrett stood on the town hall steps, hat in hand. You got guts, I'll give you that. Don't need guts, need proof. Garrett came down the steps slowly. I've known Cornelius Ashford for 10 years. He's not a good man, never was. But he's powerful, and power makes people look the other way. You included? Garrett's jaw tightened. Maybe. Once. He met Elijah's eyes. But I saw those bruises. I saw how those children looked when you brought them in from the cold. That ain't right, no matter what papers say. So help us. I can't. Not openly. Not yet. Garrett glanced back at the town hall, where Ashford was still visible through the window. But I can give you some advice. Watch your back tonight. Ashford don't like losing, and he's got men who'll do whatever he asks. I figured. There's more. Garrett lowered his voice. James Brennan's death. I was the one who filed the report. Ashford told me it was an accident. Told me he found the body at the bottom of the cliff. But when I got there, the body had been moved. Tracks in the snow showed it. and there were marks on Brennan's coat. Handprints, like someone had grabbed him from behind. Elijah's blood went cold. You never said anything. Ashford's money pays my salary, pays for the jail, the deputies, the whole damn office. Garrett's voice was bitter. I told myself it didn't matter. Brennan was dead either way. What difference would questions make? It makes a difference to his children. Garrett flinched. I know. God help me, I know. He put his hat back on. 3 days, Thornton. If Stone comes back with proof, I'll do what's right, I swear it. He walked away into the growing dark. Elijah stood alone in the street, the cold seeping through his coat. 3 days. 3 days to keep 7 children alive. 3 days to prove a murderer's guilt. 3 days to find justice in a town that had forgotten what the word meant. He looked up at the sky. Stars were beginning to appear cold and distant. Somewhere up there, Margaret was watching. Hope was watching. He wouldn't fail them again. Martha's cellar was warm when he returned, lit by a single candle. The children were asleep in a pile of blankets, all except Sam, who sat by the ladder with the rifle across his knees. You're back. Told you I would be. Elijah climbed down and sat beside him. We got 3 days. Judge postponed his ruling. Sam let out a breath. That's good, right? It's something. Elijah looked at the sleeping children. How are they? Scared? Tired? Sam's voice dropped. Grace cried. She never cries. She's allowed. They all are. What about you? Sam turned to look at him. You ever cry? Elijah was quiet for a long moment. After my wife died, he said finally. I cried every night for a month. Thought I'd never stop. Thought the grief would drown me. What happened? One day the tears just stopped. Not because the pain was gone, just because I'd run out. Nothing left. He rubbed his face. That's when I knew I was in trouble. Grief that can't get out turns into something else, something harder. What does it turn into? Stone. Elijah looked at his hands. Cold, dead stone. And it takes a long time to break that apart again. Sam was quiet. Then softly. Is that why you're helping us, to break apart the stone? Elijah didn't answer right away. He watched the candlelight flicker across the faces of the sleeping children. Watched Lily's chest rise and fall. Watched Tommy's fingers curl around his stuffed bear. Maybe, he said finally. Or maybe I just remember what it's like to have nobody. To feel like the whole world's against you and there ain't a soul who cares. We care. Sam's voice was barely a whisper. About you, I mean. We ain't known you long, but what? You feel like family. Sam looked away embarrassed. That's stupid, ain't it? We just met you 3 days ago. Ain't stupid at all. Elijah put a hand on the boy's shoulder. Family's not about time. It's about who shows up when things get hard. The candle flickered. Shadows danced on the earthen walls. Get some sleep, Elijah said. I'll take watch. Sam hesitated. Then he set down the rifle and moved to join the others. Stopped halfway there. Mr. Thornton? Yeah. Thank you for not giving up on us. Sam lay down next to Clara, pulled a blanket over himself, and closed his eyes. Elijah picked up the rifle and settled against the wall. 3 days. Outside, the wind howled against the store above them. Snow was falling again, burying the town in white. Somewhere out there, Ashford was planning, scheming, looking for a way to win. But here in this cellar, 7 children were sleeping safe and warm. And that was victory enough for tonight. The second day started with fire. Elijah smelled the smoke before he saw it. He climbed out of the cellar just past dawn, and Martha was standing at her back window, face white as bone. Your ranch, she whispered. Elijah, your ranch. He pushed past her and looked. On the horizon, where his property sat against the foothills, a column of black smoke rose into the gray morning sky. His house, his barn, Everything Margaret had touched, everything Hope had known. Burning. No. The word came out strangled. No, no, no. He was out the door before Martha could stop him. Running for his horse. Riding hard through the empty streets, through the snow up the road toward home. But he knew before he got there. Knew it was too late. The house was gone. Walls collapsed inward, roof caved in flames, still licking at the blackened timbers. The barn was a skeleton of smoking beams. The fence posts smoldered like torches planted in the snow. Elijah dismounted and walked toward the ruins. The heat pushed against his face. The smell of burning wood filled his lungs. Everything. Everything he'd built with Margaret. The kitchen where she'd taught him to make biscuits. The bedroom where Hope had been born. The chair by the fire where he'd held his daughter for the first and last time. Gone. All of it. He fell to his knees in the snow. Behind him, hoofbeats. He didn't turn. Didn't care who it was. Let them come. Let them finish it. Elijah. Sheriff Garrett's voice. Careful. Cautious. I came as soon as I saw the smoke. Did you? Elijah's voice was dead. And where were your deputies last night? Where were your men while someone was burning my life to the ground? Garrett didn't answer. Ashford. Elijah stood slowly, turned to face the sheriff. This was Ashford. You don't know that. The hell I don't. Elijah stepped closer. His hands were shaking. Not from cold, from rage. He can't beat me in court, so he's trying to break me, destroy everything I have, make me give up. Even if that's true, I can't arrest a man without evidence. Evidence. Elijah laughed. It sounded like breaking glass. There's your evidence, Wade. 100 acres of it. You think that fire started itself? Garrett looked away. His jaw worked. I'll investigate. Ask around. See if anyone saw anything. You do that. Elijah walked past him toward his horse. And while you're asking around, ask yourself how you're going to sleep tonight. Ask yourself if Ashford's money is worth your soul. He mounted up and rode away without looking back. The children were awake when he returned to the cellar. They could tell something was wrong the moment he came down the ladder. Mr. Thornton. Clara's voice was small. What happened? Elijah sat down heavily against the wall. He couldn't speak, couldn't find the words. Sam moved closer. Sir. My ranch. Elijah's voice cracked. Ashford burned it. The house. The barn. Everything. Silence. Heavy and absolute. Because of us. Grace's voice was barely a whisper. He did it because of us. He did it because he's a monster. Elijah looked up at her. This ain't your fault, none of it. But if we hadn't come to you, then you'd be dead. Elijah's voice was sharp. Frozen in a snowdrift or starved in his cellar. Is that what you want? You want me to wish I'd never found you? Grace flinched. I'm sorry. Elijah rubbed his face. I didn't mean to snap. You lost everything. Jake's quiet voice. The boy was sitting apart from the others, his book in his lap. Like we did. Elijah met his eyes. Yeah, like you did. Does it hurt? More than anything. Jake nodded slowly. It gets worse before it gets better. That's what Mama used to say. The worst pain comes right before the healing starts. Your mama was a wise woman? She was. Jake looked down at his book. Mr. Thornton, I want to show you something. He stood and crossed the cellar, sat down beside Elijah, and opened the leather cover. I told you I saw Ashford push my papa, but I didn't tell you everything. He flipped through the pages, past the drawing of his mother, past the sketch of the cabin, past images Elijah didn't recognize, faces, places, moments captured in pencil. Then Jake stopped. Here. The drawing showed two men standing near a cliff edge. One was clearly Ashford. Jake had captured the gold ring, the expensive coat, the cold eyes. The other was smaller, dressed in work clothes. James Brennan. But there was a third figure, standing behind them, watching. "Who's that?" Elijah pointed. "I don't know his name, but I know his face." Jake's voice was steady. "He works for Ashford. Big man, scar on his chin. He was there when Papa died. He helped Ashford do it." "Helped how?" "He was holding Papa's arms, from behind, so Papa couldn't fight back when Ashford pushed him." Elijah's blood went cold. "You're sure about this?" "I'm sure." Jake turned the page. Another drawing. The same scarred man, this time standing in front of a building. "I saw him again last week, in town. He was outside the sheriff's office talking to one of the deputies." "Which deputy?" "The young one. Brown hair, nervous eyes." Elijah knew him. Deputy Miller, new to the job, eager to please. "Jake." Elijah put his hand on the boy's shoulder. "This changes everything. If we can prove this man was involved in your father's death, we can connect him to Ashford. Force the sheriff to investigate." "But how do we prove it?" Sam had moved closer, listening. "It's still Jake's word against theirs." "Not just Jake's word." Elijah looked at the drawing. "Jake, you said you remember everything, every detail. If I brought you face to face with this man, could you identify him? In front of witnesses?" Jake's face went pale. I don't know. You'd have to be brave. Braver than you've ever been." "I'm scared of him." Jake's voice cracked. "He has mean eyes, like a wolf." "I know." Elijah squeezed his shoulder. "But sometimes being brave means doing the thing that scares you most. Can you do that? For your papa?" Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then he closed his book and looked up. "Papa told me once that fear is just a feeling. It can't hurt you unless you let it." He took a shaky breath. "I'll do it. For Papa. For all of us." Elijah felt something shift in his chest. Pride. Hope. Something he hadn't felt in years. "Good boy." He stood up. "I need to go into town. Find out who this scarred man is and where he's staying. I'm coming with you." Sam was already reaching for his coat. "No, you stay here. Protect the others. You can't go alone. Not after what happened to your ranch." "Sam." "I'm not asking." Sam's jaw was set. "You need someone to watch your back. I'm the oldest. That's my job." Elijah looked at the boy. 14 years old, shoulders squared, eyes determined. So much weight on such young shoulders. "All right," he said finally. "But you do exactly what I say. No arguments, no heroics." "Understood." Sam nodded. Clara stepped forward. "Be careful, both of you." "We will." Elijah climbed the ladder. "Keep the trapdoor locked. Don't open it for anyone but me or Martha." The streets of Silver Springs were quiet. Too quiet. People Elijah had known for years turned away when he passed. Doors closed. Curtains fell. Ashford had been busy. "They're scared," Sam said quietly. "Just like you said. Fear makes people do ugly things." Elijah kept walking. "Come on. The saloon's this way." The Silver Dollar was half empty in the middle of the day. A few old-timers nursing drinks at the bar. A card game in the corner. The bartender, a thick-necked man named Hank, looked up as they entered. "Thornton, heard about your place. Damn shame." "Yeah." Elijah moved to the bar. "I'm looking for someone. Big man, scar on his chin, works for Ashford." Hank's face closed down. "Don't know nobody like that." "You sure?" "I said I don't know him." Elijah leaned closer. "Hank, I've been drinking in this saloon for 10 years. You know me. You knew my wife. You came to her funeral." Hank's eyes dropped. "I'm not asking you to pick a side. I'm just asking for a name." Long silence. Then Hank glanced around, making sure no one was listening. Silas Cobb, he muttered. That's the man you're looking for. Ex-soldier, mean as a snake. He's been doing Ashford's dirty work for 3 years now. Where's he staying? Room above the feed store. But Thornton... Hank grabbed his arm. Don't go there. Cobb's killed men before. He won't think twice about killing you. Thanks for the warning. Elijah straightened. Come on, Sam. They were halfway to the door when a voice stopped them. Thornton. Elijah turned. A man had stood up from the card game. Young, brown hair, nervous eyes. Deputy Miller. Sheriff wants to see you. Tell him I'm busy. It ain't a request. Miller's hand moved toward his gun. He said right now. Elijah felt Sam tense beside him. Easy, Elijah murmured. Don't do anything stupid. They followed Miller out of the saloon and down the street to the sheriff's office. The building was small, weathered with bars on the windows. Inside, Sheriff Garrett sat behind his desk, and standing beside him, arms crossed, smile cold, was Cornelius Ashford. Mr. Thornton? Ashford's voice was silk. So good of you to join us. What do you want? I want my wards back. And since you seem determined to make that difficult, I've decided to take matters into my own hands. He nodded at Garrett. Sheriff? Garrett's face was gray. He wouldn't meet Elijah's eyes. Elijah Thornton, I'm placing you under arrest for kidnapping, child endangerment, and obstruction of justice. On whose authority? Mine. Ashford held up another document. That damned red seal. Judge Harmon signed the warrant this morning. You're to be held until the children are returned to my care. The judge gave us 3 days. The judge changed his mind. Ashford's smile widened. Amazing what a generous donation to the courthouse renovation fund can accomplish. Sam stepped forward. You can't do this. He ain't done nothing wrong. Ashford looked at him. Really looked. Ah, the oldest Whitmore boy. Samuel, isn't it? I've been wondering where you've been hiding. Sam's face went white. Don't worry, you'll be coming home soon. All of you. Ashford turned back to Garrett. Sheriff, if you please. Garrett stood slowly, reached for the handcuffs on his belt. Wade. Elijah's voice was quiet. You know this is wrong. I know. Garrett's voice was barely a whisper. But I got a family too, Elijah. I got 2 daughters and a wife. What am I supposed to do? The right thing. Garrett's hands shook as he clicked the cuffs around Elijah's wrists. I'm sorry. Elijah said nothing. There was nothing to say. They put him in the back cell, small, cold, with a narrow cot and a bucket in the corner. The bars were solid iron, the walls thick stone. No way out. Sam stood on the other side of the bars, his face desperate. I'll get help. Martha, someone. Sam, listen to me. Elijah pressed against the bars. Go back to the cellar. Tell the others what happened. And whatever you do, don't let Ashford find you. But, promise me. Sam's eyes filled with tears. He wiped them away angrily. I promise. Good. Elijah reached through the bars and gripped the boy's shoulder. You're a good kid, Sam. Your mama would be proud. Sam's face crumpled for just a second. Then he straightened his shoulders, turned, and walked out of the sheriff's office. Elijah watched him go. Then he sat down on the cot and put his head in his hands. Outside, through the small barred window, he could see the sun setting behind the mountains, red and gold and fading. 2 days left. And he was trapped in a cage while Ashford hunted his children. God help them all. Hours passed. The cell grew dark. Cold seeped through the walls. Elijah couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Margaret's face, Hope's face, the faces of 7 children who were counting on him. And he'd failed them, just like he'd failed his own family. Footsteps in the corridor, a lantern swinging. Deputy Miller appeared, keys in hand. Visitor for you. I don't want visitors. Too bad. Miller unlocked the cell door. He insisted. A figure stepped into the light. Tall, broad-shouldered, a scar running down his chin. Silas Cobb. Miller backed away. You got 5 minutes. He disappeared down the corridor. Cobb stepped into the cell. His eyes were flat empty, the eyes of a man who'd seen death and didn't care. Mr. Thornton. His voice was low, rough. We need to talk. About what? About what happens next. Cobb pulled the cell door closed behind him. Mr. Ashford is tired of waiting. He wants those children. Tonight. I don't know where they are. Don't lie to me. Cobb moved closer. I've been watching. I know they're somewhere in town. I know that woman Chen is helping you. And I know that if you don't tell me where they're hiding, things are going to get unpleasant. You don't scare me. No. Cobb smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Then maybe I should tell you about James Brennan, about how he screamed when he went over that cliff, how he reached for the edge, tried to hold on, but his fingers just slipped. Elijah's stomach turned. I was there, you know. Held him still while Mr. Ashford pushed. He begged, offered us money, land, anything. But Mr. Ashford said dead men don't make deals. Cobb leaned closer. His boy was watching. Did you know that little red-haired kid on the ridge? Mr. Ashford saw him too. Said he'd deal with him later. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Cobb's voice dropped. Those children are dead anyway, all of them. Mr. Ashford can't let them live. They know too much. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me where they're hiding. And in exchange, I'll make it quick. Painless. They won't suffer. Something snapped in Elijah's chest. He moved before he knew he was moving. His shoulders slammed into Cobb's gut. They hit the wall hard. Cobb grunted, swung a fist. It connected with Elijah's jaw, sent stars exploding across his vision. But Elijah didn't stop. Couldn't stop. He grabbed Cobb's coat, drove his knee into the man's stomach, felt the air go out of him. Cobb staggered back, gasping. His hand went for the knife on his belt. You're gonna regret that. Maybe. Elijah's fists came up. But you're gonna regret it more. They circled each other in the tiny cell. Cobb lunged, first blade flashing. Elijah dodged, felt the knife slice his arm. Blood welled up hot and red. He didn't care. Didn't feel it. All he felt was rage. He caught Cobb's wrist, twisted hard. The knife clattered to the floor. Cobb swung with his free hand, but Elijah ducked under it, drove his elbow into the man's throat. Cobb went down, hard. Elijah dropped on top of him, hands around his throat. You think you can threaten my children? His voice was barely human. You think you can tell me you're going to kill them, and I'll just... Elijah. A voice. Far away. Getting closer. Elijah, stop. Hands pulled at his shoulders. Someone was shouting. He blinked. Cobb's face swam into focus beneath him. Purple, eyes bulging, barely breathing. He let go. Garrett was there, and Martha, and behind them faces he didn't recognize, people from the town, all staring at him with horror in their eyes. What happened? Garrett was looking at Cobb, at the blood, at the chaos of the cell. Miller said he heard fighting. He came to kill me. Elijah stood slowly. His hands were shaking. He confessed. Told me he helped Ashford murder James Brennan. Told me Ashford's planning to kill all 7 children. Murmurs from the crowd. That's a lie. Cobb was sitting up, rubbing his throat. He attacked me. I was just here to deliver a message from Mr. Ashford. He had a knife. Elijah pointed to where it lay on the floor. Ask Miller. Did I have a weapon when I was arrested? Garrett picked up the knife, studied it. It's got Ashford's crest on the handle. Martha's voice was sharp. I've seen him wear it at town meetings. That's his personal blade. More murmurs. Louder now. Garrett's face was changing. Something moving behind his eyes. Something that looked almost like resolve. Silas Cobb. His voice was formal. I'm placing you under arrest for assault with a deadly weapon. You'll be held until we can sort this out. You can't. Cobb's eyes were wild. Mr. Ashford will destroy you. He'll... Get him out of here. Garrett nodded at Miller. Put him in the other cell. And this time, don't let anyone in without my permission. Miller hesitated. Then he grabbed Cobb's arm and hauled him away. The crowd began to disperse, whispering among themselves. Martha stayed behind. Elijah! She was looking at his arm. You're bleeding. I know. He didn't care. The children, are they safe? For now, Sam came back, told them everything. Martha's voice dropped. But Elijah Ashford's got men watching my store. They know something's there. It's only a matter of time. Then we need to move them. Where Ashford's got eyes everywhere. Elijah's mind raced. Then it hit him. The church. What? The church. It's the one place even Ashford won't violate. Not with the whole town watching. Not after what happened here tonight. Elijah grabbed the bars. Wade, let me out. Garrett hesitated. You heard what Cobb said. You heard him confess. Those children are in danger, and I'm the only one who can protect them. Long silence. Garrett looked at the knife in his hand, at the blood on the floor, at the faces of the townspeople still lingering in the corridor. Then he reached for his keys. I must be out of my mind. The church was dark when they arrived. Elijah led the way, Martha beside him, Garrett bringing up the rear. The children were waiting outside the back entrance of the general store, huddled together in the shadows. Sam had his arms around Lily. Clara was holding Tommy's hand. Jake clutched his book like a lifeline. Mr. Thornton. Clara's voice broke with relief. We thought... I know. I'm here now. Elijah knelt in front of them. Listen to me. We're moving. Tonight. To the church. The church? Grace's voice was skeptical. How's that gonna help? Because tomorrow, everyone in this town is going to hear the truth. In front of God and everybody. Elijah looked at Jake. You're going to tell them what you saw. What Ashford did to your father. Jake's face went white. I know it's scary, but you're not alone anymore. Elijah put his hand on the boy's shoulder. I'll be right there beside you. So will Sam and Clara and all the others. We're a family now, and family stands together. Jake looked at his siblings, at the other children who had become his brothers and sisters over the past months of shared suffering. Then he nodded. I'll do it. They moved through the empty streets like ghosts, keeping to the shadows. The church rose before them, white steeple reaching toward the stars. Garrett opened the door, and they filed inside. Wooden pews, simple altar, the smell of candle wax and old wood. You'll be safe here tonight, Garrett said. Garrett. I'll post a deputy outside. Make sure no one gets in. What about Ashford? Martha asked. When he finds out, let me worry about Ashford. Garrett's voice was hard. I've spent too long looking the other way. It's time I remembered why I took this badge in the first place. He left without another word. Elijah settled the children in the front pews, wrapped them in blankets Martha had brought. One by one they drifted off to sleep, exhausted by fear and adrenaline. All except Jake. The boy sat beside Elijah, his book open in his lap pencil, moving across a fresh page. What are you drawing? Tomorrow. Jake's voice was soft. What I hope it looks like. Elijah looked at the page. A courtroom. People in pews. And at the front, a small boy standing tall, pointing at a man in chains. It's gonna happen, Elijah said. Just like that, I promise. Jake stopped drawing, looked up at him with those old eyes. My papa used to make promises. He said he'd always protect us. He said nothing bad would ever happen as long as he was around. Jake's voice cracked. And then he died. Elijah didn't have an answer for that. There was no answer. I can't promise nothing bad will happen, he said finally. But I can promise I'll fight. Every day. Every hour. As long as I have breath in my body. Why? Because you're worth fighting for. Elijah put his arm around the boy. All of you. Every single one. Jake leaned against him, small and thin and trusting. Mr. Thornton. Yeah. When this is over, if we win, can we stay with you? All of us. Elijah's throat tightened. He thought about his empty ranch, the ashes where his home used to be, the graves under the oak tree. I'd like that, he said quietly. I'd like that very much. Jake closed his book and let his eyes fall shut. Outside the night was silent. No wind, no sound, just the stars wheeling overhead and the promise of dawn. Tomorrow, everything would change, one way or another. Morning came with the sound of church bells. Elijah woke with a start, his hand reaching for a rifle that wasn't there. It took him a moment to remember where he was. The wooden pews, the altar, the 7 children still sleeping in a huddle near the front. The bells kept ringing. Martha burst through the side door, her face flushed. They're coming! The whole town! What? Elijah stood, his body aching from a night on the hard pew. Word got out about last night, about Cobb's confession, about what he said. Martha's voice was breathless. People are angry, Elijah. They want answers. Sam was awake now, shaking the others. What's happening? Town meeting. Elijah moved toward the door. Stay here. Keep the little ones calm. But, Sam, trust me. The boy's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Outside, the street was filling with people, more than Elijah had ever seen in Silver Springs. Ranchers from the outlying properties, shopkeepers, miners, families with children, all of them moving toward the town hall, their breath fogging in the cold morning air. And at the center of it all, standing on the town hall steps, like a king surveying his subjects, was Cornelius Ashford. He saw Elijah and smiled. That cold, empty smile that never reached his eyes. Mr. Thornton, I see you've managed to escape your cell. How unfortunate. The sheriff released me. Did he? Ashford glanced at Garrett, who stood off to the side, his face unreadable. We'll have to discuss that later. There won't be a later. Elijah climbed the steps, putting himself eye level with Ashford. It's over. Cobb talked. Everyone knows what you did. Cobb is a drunk and a liar. No one will believe him. Maybe not, but they'll believe Jake Brennan. Something flickered across Ashford's face, just for a second, then the mask was back. The boy is confused, traumatized. Anything he says, he drew pictures. Elijah's voice carried across the crowd, detailed pictures of what he saw, of you pushing his father off that cliff, of Cobb holding him still. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, people shifting, whispering, looking at each other. Lies. Ashford's voice rose. All of it lies. This man is desperate. He's kidnapped 7 children who belong in my care, and now he's fabricating evidence to justify his crimes. Then let the boy speak. A new voice. Sarah Chen pushed through the crowd, her arms crossed. If he's lying, everyone will see it. If he's telling the truth. She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Ashford's jaw tightened. I won't subject my wards to this circus. They ain't your wards. Elijah stepped closer. They never were. You bought them from desperate parents, beat them, starved them, worked them like animals. And when one of them saw you commit murder, you decided they all had to disappear. That's enough. Ashford turned to the crowd, his voice booming. This man is clearly unstable. He lost his wife and daughter years ago, and now he's projecting his grief onto innocent children. He needs help, not a platform. I need justice. Elijah's voice was steady. And so do those children. So does James Brennan. So does everyone you've ever hurt. Silence. The crowd waited, breath held, watching the two men face each other on the steps. Then, a new sound. Hoofbeats. Coming fast. Everyone turned. A rider was coming up the main street, pushing through the snow horse lathered and steaming. As he got closer, Elijah recognized him. Reverend Stone. Stone pulled up at the edge of the crowd and dismounted. He was exhausted, clothes covered in trail dust, but his eyes were bright. "I found it!" His voice carried across the silent crowd. Emily Brennan's will. Registered at St. Catherine's Parish in 1884. He held up a document. Even from a distance, Elijah could see the white wax seal of the church. It names her sister Helen Crawley as legal guardian of Jake and Abby Brennan in the event of James's death, not Cornelius Ashford. Stone walked forward, the crowd parting before him. Any guardianship papers filed after Emily's death are invalid. Fraudulent. Ashford's face went gray. That document could be forged. Anyone could. It was witnessed by 3 church officials and registered with the territorial court. Stone climbed the steps and handed the document to Judge Harmon, who had emerged from the town hall at the commotion. "Check the seal yourself, Your Honor. It's authentic." Harmon took the document. His hands were shaking. This changes things. It changes everything." Elijah looked at Ashford. "You had no legal right to those children. You never did. Everything you've done to them, the beatings, the starvation, the forced labor, was criminal." "That's not true." Ashford's voice had lost its smoothness. "I took them in when no one else would. I gave them a home. You gave them a prison." Martha's voice cut through the air. "My husband and I used to talk about adopting one of them, giving them a real home. But you said no. Said they were better off with you. Learning discipline." More voices now. People stepping forward. "My boy went to school with the Whitmore children. Said they came in with bruises. Said they never had enough to eat. I saw Ashford's man, that Cobb fellow, dragging the little girl down the street last month. She was crying, begging him to stop. He foreclosed on my ranch when I couldn't make payments. Took everything. And now I find out he's been hurting children." The crowd was turning. Elijah could feel it. The fear that had kept them silent was cracking, breaking apart under the weight of shared anger. "This is ridiculous." Ashford backed toward the town hall door. "You're all being manipulated. This man Thornton, he's the criminal here. He's the one who—" "Mr. Ashford." A small voice, cutting through the noise. Everyone turned. Jake Brennan stood at the edge of the crowd. Sam was beside him, one hand on his shoulder. The other children clustered behind them, watching with wide eyes. Jake walked forward. His steps were steady, but Elijah could see his hands shaking. "Mr. Ashford!" Jake's voice was louder now, clearer. "You killed my papa." Ashford laughed. It sounded forced, brittle. "Child, I don't know what lies you've been told, but I saw you." Jake kept walking. The crowd parted for him like water. "I was on the ridge, playing. I saw you and Mr. Cobb grab Papa. I saw you push him over the cliff. I heard him scream." Silence. Absolute silence. "You're lying." Ashford's voice cracked. "You're just a boy. You don't know what you saw." "I know exactly what I saw." Jake reached into his coat and pulled out his leather book. "And I drew it. All of it." He opened the book and held it up. The crowd pressed closer, craning to see. The drawing was simple, but devastating. 2 men at a cliff's edge. One pushing, one falling. And a third man standing behind, holding the victim's arms. "That's Ashford." Someone in the crowd pointed. "Look at the ring, the coat. That's him. And that's Cobb. I recognize the scar." My God, the boy's telling the truth. Ashford's mask finally crumbled. His face twisted with rage and fear. "You little—" He lunged toward Jake. Elijah moved faster. He caught Ashford's arm, spun him around, drove him back against the town hall wall. "Don't you touch him! Get off me!" Ashford struggled. "This is assault, Sheriff. Arrest this man!" Garrett stepped forward. But instead of reaching for Elijah, he reached for Ashford. "Cornelius Ashford, I'm placing you under arrest for the murder of James Brennan, for fraud, for child abuse, and for anything else we find when we start looking." "You can't do this." Ashford's voice was high, panicked. "I own this town. I own you." "Not anymore." Garrett clicked the handcuffs around his wrists. "You don't own nothing anymore." The crowd erupted. Voices overlapping, people, cheering, some crying. Children who had known the Brennan and Whitmore kids running to embrace them. Elijah stepped back, watching it all unfold. His legs felt weak. His hands were shaking. Then small arms wrapped around his waist. Tommy, looking up at him with those big brown eyes. "You did it, Mr. Thornton. You saved us." Elijah knelt down and pulled the boy close. "We saved each other, son. We saved each other." The trial was quick, with Cobb's confession, Jake's testimony, Stone's documents, and a parade of witnesses finally willing to speak. Ashford didn't stand a chance. Judge Harmon, facing his own investigation for corruption, had no choice but to rule against his former poker partner. Guilty on all counts: murder, fraud, child abuse, conspiracy. They hanged him 3 weeks later on a cold February morning. Elijah didn't go to watch. Neither did the children. Some things didn't need to be seen. What mattered was what came after. Martha Chen opened her store that afternoon to find a crowd waiting outside. Not angry this time, grateful. "We want to help," Sarah Chen said. She'd become the unofficial spokesperson for the townspeople, her sharp voice cutting through any hesitation. "Thornton lost his ranch because of Ashford. Because he did the right thing. We figure the least we can do is help him rebuild." By the end of the day, they had pledges of lumber nails labor, enough to build a house twice the size of the one that burned. "You don't have to do this," Elijah told them. "I didn't do it for thanks. We know." Tom Wheeler, the livery owner who had turned his back just days before, couldn't meet Elijah's eyes. "That's why we're doing it. Because you didn't ask." Construction started in March when the snow began to melt. 20 men from town showed up that first day. By the end of the week, there were 30. The children helped too. Sam learned to swing a hammer. Clara organized the volunteers, making sure everyone had water and food. Jake drew sketches of the progress, filling page after page with images of walls going up, of rooms taking shape. Even the little ones found ways to contribute. Tommy carried nails in his pockets. Lily sang songs to keep everyone's spirits up. Abby told stories during lunch breaks, her imagination turning the construction site into a castle, a ship, a magical kingdom. Grace stood apart at first, watching with suspicious eyes. She'd been hurt too many times to trust easily. But one afternoon, Elijah found her sitting on a stack of lumber, staring at the half-built house. "Something wrong?" She didn't answer right away. "It's too good," she finally said. "All of this. The house, the people helping, you." She looked at him, her eyes hard. "Things don't stay good. They always fall apart." Elijah sat down beside her. "You're right. Sometimes they do." "Then why bother? Why build something that's just going to burn down or get taken away, or because it's worth it?" Elijah watched the workers moving around the site, laughing, shouting instructions, working together. Even if it falls apart tomorrow, even if everything goes wrong, the building still matters. The trying still matters. That doesn't make sense. Maybe not. Elijah put his hand on her shoulder. "But your mama thought it was worth it. She had you, didn't she? Even knowing how hard life could be. Even knowing she might not be able to keep you." Grace flinched. "She didn't keep us. She sold us." She made an impossible choice, and I ain't saying it was right. But she loved you. Enough to hope someone would take care of you when she couldn't. Ashford didn't take care of us. No, he didn't. Elijah's voice was quiet. But I will, if you'll let me. Grace was silent for a long time. Then slowly, she leaned against his shoulder. I'll think about it. It was the closest thing to trust she'd ever offered. Elijah put his arm around her and watched the sun set over the mountains. The house was finished in April. 2 stories, 6 bedrooms, a big kitchen with a wood stove, a porch that wrapped around 2 sides. The children stood in front of it staring. It's huge, Sam breathed. It's home. Elijah opened the front door. Come on, let me show you your rooms. They explored every corner, tested every floorboard, opened every window to let in the spring air. Clara cried when she saw her room. A real bed, a dresser with a mirror, curtains her mother would have loved. It's too much, she whispered. We don't deserve. You deserve everything. Elijah's voice was rough. You deserve peace and safety, and a place to grow up without fear. This house, it's just wood and nails. But what we build inside it, that's what matters. That night they ate dinner together at the big table in the kitchen. Stew that Martha had made, bread that Clara had baked, pie that Abby had helped assemble, though more filling had ended up on her face than in the crust. Elijah looked around the table at the faces of his family. Because that's what they were now, not by blood, by choice. Sam finally relaxing, finally allowing himself to be a kid instead of a parent. Clara still mothering everyone but learning to let others take care of her too. Jake, his book open beside his plate, sketching the moment for posterity. Grace still wary but softening day by day. Abby telling an elaborate story about a princess and a dragon that somehow involved pie. Tommy, his bear, sitting in the chair beside him, included in everything. Lily nearly asleep in her seat, worn out from a day of running through the new house. 7 children. 7 miracles. Mr. Thornton. Lily's sleepy voice broke through the chatter. Yeah, honey. Can I call you Papa now? The table went quiet. Elijah's throat tightened. He thought about Hope, about the word Daddy on her lips, about how he'd thought he'd never hear anything like it again. Yeah, his voice cracked. Yeah, you can call me Papa. Lily smiled, her eyes closing. Good, because you feel like a papa. She was asleep before she finished the sentence. Clara picked her up gently. I'll put her to bed. I'll help. Sam stood reaching for Tommy, who was also fading fast. One by one, the children drifted upstairs. Good nights exchanged. Doors closing. The sounds of a family settling in for the night. Elijah sat alone at the table listening. This was what he'd lost. This fullness, this noise, this sense of purpose. He'd thought it was gone forever, but here it was again. Different, harder, built on ashes and grief and impossible hope, but real. He walked out onto the porch. The night was clear. Stars spread across the sky like scattered diamonds. In the distance, he could see the mountains still capped with snow. Footsteps behind him. Jake. The boy came to stand beside him, his book clutched to his chest. Can't sleep. Jake shook his head. Too much thinking. What about Papa, Mama? Jake's voice was quiet. I used to dream about them every night. But lately, I don't know. The dreams are different. Different how? They're happy now. In the dreams. They're together. And they're smiling at me. Like they're proud. Jake looked up at Elijah. Is that strange? No. Elijah put his hand on the boy's shoulder. That's not strange at all. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Jake opened his book and held it out. I made this. For you. Elijah took the book. On the page was a drawing. The new house. The porch where they stood now. And in front of it, 8 figures. 7 children of different sizes. And one tall man standing in the middle, his arms around them all. Underneath, in careful handwriting, "Our family." Elijah's eyes burned. "Jake, this is... I wanted you to have something to remember. In case..." Jake's voice faltered. "In case things change. In case something happens. So you'd know that right now, right here, we were happy. All of us. Because of you." Elijah closed the book, knelt down so he was eye level with the boy. "Nothing's going to happen. You hear me? I'm not going anywhere. None of us are." "You can't promise that. Nobody can promise." "I know." Elijah pulled him close. "I know I can't promise forever, but I can promise today, and tomorrow, and the day after that. I can promise to keep showing up every single day for as long as I'm breathing." Jake's arms came up, wrapping around Elijah's neck. "That's enough," he whispered. "That's enough for me." They stayed like that for a long moment. A man who had lost everything finding his way back. A boy who had seen too much learning to trust again. Then Jake pulled back, wiping his eyes. "I should go to bed." "Yeah, you should." Jake started toward the door, then stopped. "Mr. Thornton, Papa." The word hit Elijah like sunlight after a long winter. "Yeah." "Thank you for not giving up on us." He disappeared inside before Elijah could respond. Elijah stood alone on the porch, the leather book in his hands, the stars wheeling overhead. He thought about Margaret, about hope, about the 2 graves under the oak tree still there, still waiting. He'd visit them tomorrow, tell them about the children, about the new house, about how their deaths had somehow impossibly led to this moment. He didn't understand it, didn't know why grief made room for love, or why loss could lead to gain. Didn't know why some people were taken too soon, while others lived long enough to find redemption. But standing there with a family sleeping safe inside, and the spring wind carrying the smell of new growth, he knew one thing. It was worth it. All of it. The pain, the struggle, the years of emptiness. Worth it. He went inside, closed the door, and climbed the stairs to check on his children. Years passed the way they do in Wyoming Territory, slowly in winter, fast in summer, measured not in days, but in seasons. The ranch grew. Elijah added more land when the opportunity came, bought cattle to run alongside the sheep, built a second barn bigger than the first. The children grew too, stretching upward like saplings reaching for sun. Sam turned 16, then 17, then 18. He grew into his shoulders, developed a quiet confidence that made other men listen when he spoke. Elijah taught him everything he knew about ranching, and Sam absorbed it like dry earth absorbs rain. "You've got a gift," Elijah told him one evening, watching Sam gentle a half-wild horse that had been giving the hired hands trouble. "The animals trust you. They know I won't hurt them." Sam stroked the horse's neck. "Animals can tell when someone's been hurt. They recognize it." Clara turned 17 and took over the household with quiet efficiency. She could stretch $1 further than anyone Elijah had ever known, could turn scraps into meals that filled bellies and warmed hearts. But more than that, she became the emotional center of the family, the one everyone turned to when they needed comfort or advice. "You're too young to be this wise," Martha Chen told her once. Clara smiled, but her eyes were old. "I had to grow up fast. We all did." Jake never stopped drawing. His book filled then another, then another. By the time he was 15, his sketches had caught the attention of a newspaper editor in Cheyenne, who offered him a job as an illustrator. "I don't want to leave," Jake told Elijah. "This is home." "Home doesn't go anywhere." Elijah put his hand on Jake's shoulder. "It'll be here when you're ready to come back. But you've got a gift, son. Don't waste it." Jake left that fall. He wrote letters every week, detailed and illustrated, full of stories about the city and the people he met. He came home for Christmas, for summer, for any excuse he could find. "The city's interesting," he said during one visit, sitting on the porch with Elijah. "But it's not this. It's not family." Grace softened over the years, though she never lost her fire completely. She became the family's defender, the one who stood up to anyone who looked at them sideways. When a new family in town made comments about that rancher with all those orphans, Grace marched right up to them and set them straight in terms that left no room for misunderstanding. "You can't just threaten people." Clara scolded her afterward. "I didn't threaten anyone." Grace crossed her arms. "I explained, loudly." Abby grew into her imagination. She started writing stories, filling notebooks with tales of adventure and romance and heroism. At 14, she announced she was going to be a novelist. "You'll need to live some life first," Elijah told her. "Best stories come from experience." "Then I'll have plenty of experience." Abby grinned. "I've got 6 siblings and a papa who fought a murderer to save us. That's enough for at least 3 books. Tommy stayed small for a long time, then shot up seemingly overnight. By 16, he was nearly as tall as Sam, though thinner, with the same quiet watchfulness he'd had as a child. He rarely spoke, but when he did, people listened. "You remind me of someone," Elijah told him once. "Who? Me, when I was young?" Elijah shook his head. "Before I learned that keeping everything inside just makes it heavier." Tommy was quiet for a moment. Then, "I'm working on it." And Lily. Lily grew up believing in magic because she'd seen it happen. A lonely rancher finding 7 children in a barn. A family built from nothing but love and stubbornness. A man who'd lost everything learning to live again. "Tell me the story again," she'd say at bedtime, even when she was 12, even when she was 14. "Tell me about the night you found us." And Elijah would tell it. Every time. Because some stories needed to be remembered. The year Sam turned 21, everything changed again. It started with a letter from Montana Territory. Helen Crawley. Emily Brennan's sister had finally tracked down her niece and nephew. She wanted to meet them. Jake was home for the summer when the letter arrived. He read it 3 times, his face unreadable. "She wants us to come live with her." His voice was flat. "Says she's got a house, land. Says she can give us a real family." Abby grabbed the letter from his hands. "That's ridiculous. We already have a real family." "Blood family." Jake looked at Elijah. "She's our aunt, our mother's sister." "I know who she is. She has legal claim to us. The will? I know what the will says." Elijah's voice was steady, but his chest ached. He'd known this might happen someday, had dreaded it for years. "What do you want, Jake?" Jake was silent for a long moment. "I don't know." They talked about it as a family sitting around the big kitchen table. All 8 of them, because that's how they made decisions together. "I don't want to go," Abby said immediately. "I don't know this woman. I know Papa. I know all of you." "But she's blood," Clara said quietly. "For Jake and Abby at least. That means something." "Does it?" Grace's voice was sharp. "Blood didn't save us. Blood sold us to Ashford. Blood beat us and starved us and... Not all blood is the same." Sam's voice was calm, cutting through the tension. "Some family hurts you. Some family heals you. The question is, which kind is she?" Everyone looked at Jake. "I need to meet her." Jake's voice was quiet. "I need to know. If I don't go, I'll always wonder." Elijah nodded slowly. "Then we go. All of us." "All of us?" Clara looked surprised. "We're a family. We don't split up." The journey to Montana took 2 weeks. They traveled by wagon, then by train, then by wagon again. The children who had never been outside Wyoming territory stared wide-eyed at the changing landscape mountains, giving way to plains, giving way to mountains again. Helen Crawley met them at the station in Helena. She was a small woman, gray-haired with Emily's eyes and Emily's gentle voice. She took one look at Jake and burst into tears. "You look just like her." She cupped his face in her hands. My sister. You have her eyes. Jake stood stiff, uncertain. Then slowly he relaxed. She loved you, he said. Mama talked about you all the time. Helen sobbed harder. They stayed a week. Helen showed them pictures of Emily as a child, told stories about their mother that Jake and Abby had never heard. She took them to Emily's grave, a small plot on a hillside overlooking the valley, and they stood together in silence, honoring a woman none of them had known long enough. I want you to come live with me, Helen said on their last night. Both of you. I have room. I have resources. I can give you opportunities your mother would have wanted you to have. Jake looked at Abby. Abby looked at him. We appreciate the offer, Jake said slowly. And we'd like to visit. Often. Get to know you. Learn about Mama. But, Helen's voice was gentle, like she already knew. But we already have a home. Jake reached out and took Elijah's hand. We already have a father. Helen's eyes filled with tears again, but she was smiling. Emily would be proud of you, both of you. She looked at Elijah. And she'd be grateful to you for loving her children when she couldn't. They made it easy. Elijah's voice was rough. Easiest thing I ever did. On the train ride home, Lily climbed into Elijah's lap, even though she was far too old for such things. Were you scared? She asked. That Jake and Abby would stay terrified. But you took us anyway, even though you might lose them. That's what love is. Elijah stroked her hair. Risking loss. Doing it anyway. That sounds hard. It is. He looked out the window at the mountains rolling past. But it's worth it. Every time. More years. More seasons. Sam married a school teacher from Cheyenne. They built a house on the north section of the ranch, close enough to visit every day, far enough for privacy. Their first child, a girl, was born on Christmas Eve. What are you going to name her? Elijah asked, holding the tiny bundle in his arms. Sam looked at his wife. She nodded. Hope. Sam's voice cracked. After your daughter, if that's all right. Elijah couldn't speak, just held the baby closer and let the tears fall. Clara married a lawyer from Silver Springs who'd helped prosecute Ashford all those years ago. He was kind, steady, the sort of man who saw Clara's strength and wasn't threatened by it. He knows I'm not easy, Clara told Elijah before the wedding. I warned him, said I've got rough edges that won't smooth out. What did he say? He said rough edges are what make diamonds valuable. Smart man. Jake's illustrations appeared in newspapers across the territory, then across the country. He drew the West, as he saw it, harsh and beautiful, unforgiving and generous. His most famous piece was a series called 7, depicting 7 children huddled in a barn, snow falling around them, a lantern light approaching in the darkness. He never sold the original. It hung in Elijah's living room until the day he died. Grace surprised everyone by becoming a doctor. She traveled east for training, worked in hospitals in Boston and New York, then came back to Wyoming to open a clinic in Silver Springs. I spent so many years being angry, she told Elijah. Angry at Mama for selling us. Angry at Ashford for hurting us. Angry at the world for being cruel. But anger just eats you up inside. I wanted to do something that helped instead of hurt. Your Mama would be proud. Grace's eyes glistened. You think? I know. Abby published her first novel at 23. It was called Winter's Children. And it told the story of a group of orphans saved by a lonely rancher on the coldest night of the year. Critics called it sentimental. Readers couldn't put it down. It sold more copies than any Western novel in a decade. It's our story, she told Elijah at the book launch. I changed the names, added some drama. But it's us. I wanted people to know what you did. What we did. Elijah held the book in his hands. I didn't do nothing by myself, thing. You showed up. Abby kissed his cheek. Every day. That's everything. Tommy became a rancher, taking over more and more of the operation as Elijah got older. He had his father's gift with animals, his mother's quiet strength traits he'd absorbed from the man who'd raised him, even though they shared no blood. "I want to buy the south section," Tommy told Elijah one evening. "Expand the herd. Build something that'll last." "It's yours. All of it. When I'm gone." "Don't talk like that." "I'm 67 years old, son. I've got to talk like that." Elijah put his hand on Tommy's shoulder. "But that's all right. I'm not scared. I've done what I needed to do. Raised 7 children into 7 good people. That's more than most men get." "You did more than raise us." Tommy's voice was thick. "You saved us." "No." Elijah shook his head. "You saved me." And Lily. Lily stayed close. She married a rancher from the next valley over, had 4 children of her own, and visited every Sunday without fail. She was the one who noticed when Elijah started slowing down. The one who made sure he ate, who checked on him at night, who sat with him on the porch when the memories got too heavy. "Tell me the story again, Papa." She was 40 now, gray streaking her golden hair, but her voice was the same little girl who'd asked for stories at bedtime. "Tell me about the night you found us." And Elijah would tell it, every detail, the cold, the barn, the 7 small faces in the lantern light, the oldest boy with his fists up ready to fight, the littlest girl, blue-lipped and barely breathing. "You saved her," Lily would say. "We saved each other." The last winter came gently. Elijah felt it in his bones, the tiredness that sleep couldn't fix, the cold that warmth couldn't touch. He'd lived 73 years longer than he'd ever expected. Longer than he'd wanted once. But not anymore. They came, all 7 of them. From across the territory, from across the country. Sam and his wife, their 3 children now grown. Clara with her husband and their twins. Jake still drawing, still remembering. Grace taking Elijah's pulse with practiced hands, hiding her tears behind professional concern. Abby clutching a manuscript, her latest book dedicated to him. Tommy, who'd never left, who sat by his bedside every night. And Lily. Always Lily. "I need to tell you something." Elijah's voice was weak but clear. "All of you." They gathered close. Grandchildren in the doorway watching with wide eyes. "When you came into my barn that night, I was done. I'd been done for years. Just going through the motions, waiting to die." He took a shaky breath. "You gave me a reason to live. Every one of you. You gave me back everything I thought I'd lost." "Papa," Clara was crying. "Don't. Let me finish." He reached for her hand, found it held tight. "I used to think family was blood. Used to think when Margaret and Hope died, my family died with them. But I was wrong. Family is who shows up, who stays, who fights for you when nobody else will." He looked at each of them in turn. Sam, his first son, his right hand. Clara, his heart. Jake, his memory. Grace, his fire. Abby, his voice. Tommy, his legacy. Lily, his joy. "I'm not scared," he said, "because I know what I'm leaving behind. I know you'll take care of each other. I know you'll pass it on, this thing we built. This family." "We will, Papa." Sam's voice broke. "We promise." "I know you will." Elijah closed his eyes. "Now, somebody tell me a story. I'm tired of talking." Lily leaned close. "Once upon a time," she whispered, "there was a lonely rancher who'd lost everything. His wife, his daughter, his reason to live. He thought his story was over. He was just waiting for the end." She took his hand. "But then on the coldest night of the year, he found 7 children hiding in his barn, starving, freezing, running from a monster who wanted them dead." Elijah's lips curved into a smile. "And the rancher had a choice. He could turn them away, keep himself safe, keep his heart locked up where nothing could hurt it. Or he could open his door, risk everything, love again." Tears fell on Elijah's hand, Lily's, others. He couldn't tell anymore. He chose love. Lily's voice cracked. He chose us. And that choice, that one choice, changed everything. It saved 7 children. It saved him. It created a family that would last for generations. She kissed his forehead. That's the story, Papa. That's your story. And it doesn't end here. It lives on. In us. In our children. In everyone we touch. Elijah squeezed her hand. One last time. Good story, he whispered. And then he was gone. They buried him next to Margaret and Hope under the oak tree where he'd knelt so many times over the years. The whole town came out. Silver Springs had grown, but nobody had forgotten what Elijah Thornton had done, what he'd stood for. Sam spoke first, then Clara, then each of the others one by one, sharing memories, sharing tears, sharing laughter. Jake didn't speak. He'd said everything in his drawings, a lifetime of images that told the story better than words ever could. But when it was over, when the crowd had dispersed and only family remained, Jake walked to the grave and laid something on the fresh-turned earth. His very first book, the leather worn almost through, the pages yellowed with age. He always said I should remember. Jake's voice was steady. I will. Always. They stood together as the sun set, 7 siblings, their spouses, their children, their children's children. A family built not from blood, but from choice, from love, from a lonely rancher who'd found 7 starving children on the coldest night of the year and decided they were worth fighting for. Lily's daughter tugged at her mother's dress. Mama, tell me the story about Great-Grandpa and the children in the barn. Lily smiled through her tears. Once upon a time. And the story lived on. As stories do. As families do. As love does, passed from hand to hand, heart to heart, generation to generation, never dying, never fading, only growing stronger with each telling. Because that's the truth of it. Blood makes kin, but love makes family. And family, real family, the kind worth having, isn't something you're born into. It's something you build. Day by day. Choice by choice. One act of courage at a time. Elijah Thornton understood that. 7 children understood that. And now, standing at his grave with the last light of day warming their faces, 3 generations understood it too. Some folks ask what makes a man risk everything for children he barely knew. The answer ain't complicated. It's just hard. You show up. Every day. No matter how cold it gets. No matter how scared you are. No matter how much easier it would be to walk away. You show up. And when you do, when you choose love over fear, family over safety, hope over despair, something miraculous happens. You find out that saving someone else is the surest way to save yourself. That's not a story. That's the truth. And the truth don't need dressing up.